Friday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not my first show.
With moments you haven't heard before.
It's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Listen to 60 Minutes, A Second Look, wherever you get your podcasts. CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Let's get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go down. Yeah, boy!
I'm calling on the House Ethics Committee to preserve and share their report and all relevant documentation on Mr. Gaetz with the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Matt Gaetz has chosen to resign from the House, but he can't choose to conceal that information.
I think there should not be any limitation on the Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation.
The real question is going to be, does the Senate, that has the responsibility for the confirmation, have the same level of confidence?
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Tonight, transition drama. What allies had been calling a smoother Trump transition runs into a rough patch, with even Republicans openly musing about whether some of the president's cabinet picks stand a chance of being confirmed. Late today, President-elect Donald Trump said he would nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. The choice of Kennedy, an anti-vaccine activist, is expected to cause major alarm among health officials and experts.
Robert F. Kennedy cares more about human beings and health and the environment than anybody. I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines.
This announcement comes on the heels of former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz being tapped for Attorney General, and our Major Garrett and Scott McFarland are following all of this and are here to help us break it all down. Major, so good to see you. There was no doubt that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to have some kind of role in the Trump administration, but there was an assumption that perhaps he'd hold some kind of czar position because he would be difficult to get confirmed. But no. The president-elect went all the way, naming him the head of HHS. What's the thinking here?
I think within this evolving Trump transition, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. represents the strongest pushback against all the things that happened during the pandemic, whether it was vaccine mandates, mask mandates, public health experts making all sorts of decisions affecting commerce, affecting what is viewable on the internet. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is sort of a reaction against all of that. I had a long interview with him in Nashville in July, right after President Biden stepped down. And he said there was massive censorship, massive constitutional violations, all carried out under the guise of pandemic protections. That message caught hold with Trump supporters. And this slogan, "Make America Healthy Again," opposition to the FDA, opposition to the CDC, opposition to any regulatory agency that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. argues passionately, some would argue erroneously, but he still argues passionately, are basically in the hands of those who are there supposed to regulate. Big pharma, big ag, to the detriment of average American citizens. That took hold in MAGA world, and it's part of the reason he's nominated today.
And just to outline why this is such an unorthodox choice, he doesn't have a medical background, but that's not a deal breaker. Our current HHS secretary does not have a medical background. But he has spread conspiracy theories about vaccines. He has spread conspiracy theories about COVID-19. And then when asked about that by you and others, he said, no, I don't believe that.
He denies it. And the record is very clear on this. And if there is a confirmation hearing, all of that will be aired. He says he's not anti-vax, but he also says that thimerosal, which is a preservative in some vaccines, causes autism. The scientific data on that is absolutely clear. By the way, thimerosal was never used in MMR vaccines, chickenpox, or polio, the ones given to children. So they were never in the children vaccine conversation ever. Yet to this day, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., when asked, will say, no, they cause autism, which is a huge scare tactic and creates genuine fear among those who don't know the underlying science. that is a legitimate area of inquiry for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
With real-life implications, because we see that when kids don't get vaccinated, there are measles outbreaks. And
there are
other
disruptions to their health,
outbreaks.
and there are disruptions to the schools in which they attend.
Scott, I know that this announcement just happened, so it's relatively early, but this is the world we now live in. Are you hearing concerns yet up there on Capitol Hill about this choice from lawmakers?
We've got limited reaction as this news happened as senators are on planes headed home from Washington, D.C. So far, it's along party lines. Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana, a doctor, by the way, who has oversight on health issues, applauded the selection of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And we have the Democrat, Ron Wyden from Oregon, who said just the opposite. So at this point, it's a predictable fallout from the nomination. Let's see if somebody goes counter to their party on this particular choice. But what's more striking to me, Nancy, is how just the past 24 hours have crystallized themselves as the first real showdown of a president-elect and his own party's controlled Senate. I mean, you can just see it coming. You can see the writing on the walls, and you can hear the names echoing off the marble on the walls. Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr. They have consumed the attention and the conversation in Washington, D.C., and what's being asked of these senators is not just do you support these nominees, but do you think you're going to have a normal process to confirm them? Is Matt Gaetz confirmable in the traditional system as Attorney General? And if not, does that mean the Senate's going to unilaterally disarm some of its power? This is, make no mistake, the first showdown between the two, and it's unclear after the first 24 hours, Nancy, which side is winning.
Scott, there are obviously questions about whether Matt Gaetz, who, as you mentioned, is the president's pick to be the nation's top law enforcement official, the secretary of the attorney general, rather, to head up the DOJ. There are questions about whether he can get confirmed. But setting that aside, now that he has resigned his position in the House, what are you hearing will happen to this House ethics investigation that was just wrapping up and was, depending on how the Ethics Committee voted, potentially about to be released?
That House Ethics Committee investigation, Nancy, began in April 2021. This is a comprehensive thing. And we know from what we've been told and what the committee has released out, this is an investigation of allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. Allegations former Congressman Gaetz has denied in totality throughout. Now that he's a former member of Congress, the custom is the House Ethics Committee drops the case. They no longer have jurisdiction over a former congressman, and that has been custom for many years. But the Senate Democrats want a copy of that report. In fact, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee made a formal ask that they release to the Senate the findings of that investigation. Any number of other Senate Democrats have said they're calling on it or demanding it too. It's unclear if it happens or when it happens. There's always the possibility what was found in that investigation leaks out somehow. But you know as well as anybody, the House Ethics Committee is perhaps the most leak-proof ship sailing in these waters. These are questions that are going to remain out there. And there have been a few members of Congress who've gotten our ear today and said, if they don't release an Ethics Committee investigation, which is possibly damning, is that something that can be leveraged against a Matt Gaetz once he's the Attorney General in a way that shouldn't be leveraged? Does this need to get out there for his own good, too? It's Democrats asking that question rhetorically, but it's being asked nonetheless.
And what's interesting is that there are even some Republicans like John Cornyn of Texas who are saying, hey, if I'm going to make a decision on this guy, I want to see what that ethics investigation looks like. The bigger question that I have for you, though, Major, is, you've got Republicans who are major allies of President Trump expressing reservations about multiple cabinet picks. How's that going over at Mar-a-Lago?
Not well, and I think we should all brace ourselves for this potential scenario, which is the president saying, I want the Senate and the House to recess for a certain period of time, and while you're in recess, I will appoint these cabinet members, and they will take positions for 2 years. And the Senate will have no advice and consent role whatsoever. The Senate would have to agree to that, but Trump has basically created so many difficult confirmation battles that some Senate Republicans might say, I don't want to take a hard vote. I don't want to ask hard questions. I don't want to anger the MAGA movement. I don't want to anger President Trump. I don't want to take any of those political risks. I'll just for the moment hand over these institutional powers. Mark my words. You hand over those institutional powers once, you've handed them over.
You're not getting them
forever.
Back. Mm-hmm.
You have handed them over forever. I was talking to Peter Welch, senator from Vermont, Democrat, today for my show, The Takeout. He served in the House for a long time. He understands the House Ethics Committee institutionally would want to protect this report and not give it to the Senate, except in a circumstance where there is a live question about someone who could be the Attorney General and whether or not that person violated ethics or possibly laws. He said that report should be released. The Senate should have it in full.
Right. And there are a lot of Senate Republicans who might be willing to go along with that. The question is, are virtually all of them willing to go along with it? Because you'd need a majority of the Senate to approve that. Major Garrett, Scott McFarlane, thank you both so much. Appreciate you. We are continuing to follow the breaking news that President-elect Donald Trump has offered RFK Jr. the Health and Human Services Secretary role. More on the beliefs he could potentially bring to a Trump administration next. You're watching America Decides. Stick around.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy.
It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour.
This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat?
Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone,
This could happen to anybody.
and sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are continuing to follow the breaking news this evening that President-elect Trump has selected Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Kennedy faced several controversies during his own White House bid, including this conspiracy theory about COVID-19.
COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Let's bring in Claire Malone for analysis. She has covered RFK Jr. for The New Yorker, wrote an extensive deep dive on a lot of his beliefs. Claire Malone, thank you so much for being with us. Take us through the evolution, if you will, from RFK Jr., the environmental hero and activist lawyer, to the RFK Jr. of today, who has espoused support for raw milk and railed against seed oils and has argued erroneously that vaccines are dangerous to children.
Yeah. Kennedy was seen as someone with real clout in the New York City environmental scene, super kind of, against the man, very skeptical of corporations, and did a lot of litigation work against genuine corporate polluters, particularly of the Hudson River, which at one point was very, very polluted. And so he does have these bona fides in the environmental movement. And in the early 2000s, he started verging into this vaccine skepticism that really took hold and I think was sort of exacerbated by his corporate skepticism. I mean, if you listen or if you went to his events during the campaign, he actually was sort of clever not to mention his anti-vaccine views all that much, but he talked a ton about corporate capture and about how Americans are being poisoned by corporations. And I think it's, his movement from respected member of a Democratic family, and obviously we cannot undersell the fact that, Kennedy got to his place of prominence very much through the Kennedy name. I mean, though he is also, I think, a very, he's sort of a charismatic presence in many ways, a person who was able to move through New York society and raise money for his causes. But he sort of went to this place of the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, in a way that a lot of Americans, I think, in the past 4 or 5 years have kind of glommed onto, that COVID vaccines made them skeptical, and that skepticism sort of turned their head everywhere and sort of made them say, well, what's happening in my food and medicine and water? And I think, he is this very interesting encapsulation of some Americans' knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic, obviously packaged in, a Kennedy name. So he's quite an interesting figure.
And I think one of the important things to note about him is that he has taken positions that a lot of health experts do agree with. He's talked about the danger of processed foods and wanting to make sure that kids eat healthier meals at school. At the same time, he has said that he wants to have every nutritional scientist across HHS and the Department of Agriculture fired on day one. So he has a very ambitious agenda that has left some health experts in this country pretty worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's too early for me to speculate about, what he might do on day one, although the rhetoric is obviously there from the campaign. One thing I think we do know about Kennedy, though, is that he has for a long time, even as others were sort of, kind of calling him a tinfoil hat conspiracist, he has really taken himself seriously. He really believed that he could and should be president of the United States. And I do think he has this vocational, aspirational sense of mission, which, some of it is egotism, as it is with all politicians. But I do think he has a real sense that he wants to be a change maker. And I think with all these Trump appointments and Kennedy, of course, it's really, I think his appointment is probably sending a lot of shockwaves through not just the federal bureaucracy, but also, state health departments who will have to think about, well, how do we potentially pick up slack from, places where the federal government might be pulling away support. So I think, he's probably got an ambitious vision for all of this.
Right. And he didn't always have political ambitions. In fact, you wrote in your amazing article about the fact that what really triggered his interest in running in the first place was the fact that his anti-vaccine organizations social media accounts got shut down by Facebook and Instagram because he was spreading misinformation. And he told you, well, I started thinking the one place they can't censor me is if I run for president. And it now seems like that was a gamble that could pay off.
Correct. Yes, he said that free speech was a huge motivating factor in his campaign. And I also feel the need to note, there's also been a lot of good reporting about how much Kennedy personally benefited from being in the vaccine skepticism sort of general area. It's sort of been personally lucrative for him to sort of be in this spotlight. Yes, it's an interesting position he finds himself in now. That's for sure.
Yep, and lots of twists and turns to come as we watch to see whether he can actually be confirmed by the Senate once President-elect Trump takes office. Claire Malone, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Only a handful of Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump will be back next year. What that says about the president-elect's grip on the Republican Party, that's coming up. You're watching America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. 10 House Republicans voted to impeach Donald Trump after January 6, 2021. Just a few years later, only 2 of them are left in Congress. Congressman David Valadao of California and Dan Newhouse of Washington State both won re-election last week. The other 8 lawmakers either lost in 2022 or decided not to run. CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall joins us now to discuss. So they are an endangered species. Hunter, what accounts for the survival of these two members?
It's fascinating, Nancy, because it's a unique primary system that really has benefited both Congressman Valadao and Congressman Newhouse. Washington State and California, where they're both from, have a nonpartisan top two primary systems. They've been able to advance to the general election, building some of that coalition that shows, why they were able to appeal to both maybe moderates, conservatives, and maybe even Democrats. Now, for Dan Newhouse, he actually defeated a Trump-endorsed Republican in this general election. It was a Republican versus a Republican contest. David Valadao is in a battleground district. He has won close races before. He is projected to have won one again in this election.
Let's talk about the Senate then for a second, because there were 7 Senate Republicans who voted to convict Donald Trump back in 2021. 3 of them are still in the Senate?
That's correct, and it was interesting. I was on Capitol Hill this week. I was talking to the senators, talking to House members, and there were so many questions to these 3 senators about, well, are you going to, how are you going to vote if, RFK Jr. gets picked for a cabinet slot, and all this stuff. And the idea was, they're seen as the potential resistance to Trump within the GOP. That's maybe not a role that they necessarily want to be in, but in the narrow majority like this that Senate Republicans are expected to have here, that can be tough, and that'll be a challenge for President-elect Trump.
Right, and we'll see where they're willing to break with him and where they aren't. Hunter Woodall, thanks so much. Fascinating. Earlier today, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell touted what he called a, quote, remarkably good economy. He spoke to business leaders in Dallas and went on to say that the central bank could take its time cutting interest rates. Powell did not give a timeline for when we could potentially see those cuts. President-elect Trump, who has been critical of Powell, has argued that he should have say over interest rate policy. Could the man who the Justice Department once investigated for sex trafficking soon lead the DOJ? We'll take a closer look into former Congressman Matt Gaetz's past and why his pick is sending shockwaves through Washington. You're watching America Decides. We'll be right back.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off.
That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Can see clearly now.
Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
Hey!
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
These 7 miles of tunnels were the secret storage site for fuel for the Navy's Pacific Fleet in planes.
So this is one of the tanks.
Oh my gosh.
What happened 20 stories below ground is a story for 60 Minutes.
This thing that was a lifeline for the fleet is a threat.
That's right.
I'm Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours, and of all the cases I've covered, this is the one that troubles me most. Listen to Murder in the Orange Grove, the troubled case against Crosley Green, wherever you get your podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Sunday morning, a visit with the Wayans at Papa's house, plus affairs of state with the diplomat, and in praise of pigeons. Listen for the trumpet.
Welcome back to America Decides. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz was once investigated by the very same department he now hopes to lead. The Justice Department looked into sex trafficking allegations against Gaetz for years. It decided not to charge Gaetz and closed the probe last year. The House Ethics Committee, though, has been investigating claims of sexual misconduct and other violations against Gaetz before he resigned yesterday. He has denied wrongdoing, we should note. CBS News investigative producer Michael Kaplan joins us now. Michael, you have been investigating these investigations for years. What do we know about what could be in this House ethics report, and will it ever see the light of day?
Well, Nancy, we know it could be quite damaging. In June, the committee underlined some of the allegations it was reviewing, including sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, financial impropriety. And it's really those sexual misconduct claims that could prove to be the most explosive. We know at least 4 women have come and testified in front of the committee, telling them they were paid to attend parties with drugs and sex, where Rep. Gaetz was also present. And we know that one of those women has said that she had sex with Gaetz when she was just 17 years old. Her attorney said in a statement today she was a, quote, high school student and there were witnesses. So that just gives you a sense of some of the details that could come out in this report. Gaetz has previously denied all wrongdoing and, has called the committee's investigation a frivolous smear campaign. But he must, it's no surprise he might be feeling relieved that this report may never see the light of day.
Right, because now that he's resigned, there's a good chance that the House Ethics Committee could just drop the whole thing. Michael, can you explain why the Justice Department looked into some of these allegations as well, investigating sex trafficking in particular, but then dropped those allegations?
Yeah, well, DOJ had investigated Gaetz as part of a larger sex trafficking probe that they opened back in 2019. And this was when President Trump was still president. In fact, as we've since learned, Gaetz had asked Trump for a blanket pardon ahead of Trump leaving office because this investigation was coming down the pike. While the Justice Department brought charges against some of Gaetz' associates, some of whom are in prison now, no charges were ever brought against Gaetz himself. This was going to be a document where some of those details in the investigation, in the DOJ investigation, were ultimately laid out in some sort of official document.
There are some senators who say they deserve to see whatever is in this Ethics Committee report. Obviously, the public has an interest in knowing about the allegations against this person who could be the nation's top law enforcement official. How does it work with the Ethics Committee when someone who they are investigating ends up resigning from Congress or leaving in some other way, as we just saw Gaetz do yesterday when he said now that he has been picked to be AG, he's resigning from Congress?
Well, previously they've shut down their investigation because the member is no longer in Congress. Obviously, this is a sort of unprecedented situation, and people close to the committee who I've spoken with say it's hard to imagine that this document or the details in this document never sees the light of day. As you mentioned, Democratic senators are asking for not only the report but the underlying information ahead of what is expected to be a pretty contentious confirmation hearing. But the committee itself is sort of not commenting on its investigation or on whether they'll ultimately release these findings.
Yeah, damaging information has a way of getting out on Capitol Hill, one way or the other. Michael Kaplan, investigative reporter for CBS News, thanks so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
And to discuss this further, let's bring in our political panel, Kevin Sheridan and Mondaire Jones. Kevin served as a spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. He was also a senior advisor for the Romney-Ryan 2012 presidential campaign. Mondaire previously served in Congress as a Democrat for New York's 17th District. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Good to see you.
Mondaire, you served alongside Congressman Gaetz, and I imagine that there are a lot of your former colleagues who would really like to see that House ethics report, because Gaetz is not exactly the most popular, now former member of the House, not just when it comes to Democrats, but when it comes to a lot of Republicans as well.
Yeah, I served on the House Judiciary Committee with Gaetz, got to know him a little bit on that committee. But perhaps more relevant for this discussion, I also served on the House Ethics Committee. And I know about the important work that this body does. It is evenly divided, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. The staff are incredible, and the work that they do is confidential until it's not, until they vote to release the work product. And while I don't think that Mike Johnson is going to allow his Republican members on that committee to issue the report, I think they're going to be meeting tomorrow morning to have a vote on this very topic. It remains to be seen whether the report will be leaked anyway. I mean, it is of great national importance. It is certainly probative of, it is relevant to whether this man is qualified from an ethical standpoint to serve as Attorney General of the United States. I think it is also widely understood that he is not qualified from a legal standpoint. I mean, this is someone who only practiced law for a couple of years, has never been a prosecutor, and who has been credibly accused of sex trafficking, as you noted earlier.
And he has few friends on the right on Capitol Hill, Kevin, because even though he is a fierce defender of Donald Trump, he also led the charge to push Kevin McCarthy out of the speakership last year, which is something that most Republicans didn't want.
Yeah, and now he's got to go back in front of a legislative body, not the same one, but the Senate, and somehow get confirmation from senators who have lots of friends in the House, I'm sure, and they're not going to, this will not be an easy confirmation, I don't think. I will say, though, that a lot of these senators right now are not looking to oppose Donald Trump on anything. But if it becomes so obvious that, if some of this stuff actually comes out and it looks really bad, maybe that flips just enough, or he pulls out. Look, if he goes in front of that committee, though, and testifies, he's a bomb thrower, and that will be remarkable television, I think.
It will be must-see TV. There are all these different theories out there about why Donald Trump would name someone like Matt Gaetz in the first place, who is under investigation for some pretty seedy behavior, to put it mildly. There's one theory that perhaps Trump wants to push him through via recess appointment, have him go wild, in Trump's vernacular, within the Department of Justice, fire a bunch of career attorneys, and then have him leave and bring in someone else. There's another theory that says, well, he's nominating Gaetz because he makes other nominees look more palatable. Which theory do you adhere to?
I'm sticking with the theory that this is who Donald Trump actually wants. I actually think that he wants somebody. He's been tortured by the DOJ in his mind for the last 4 years, and I think he wants somebody who's the biggest middle finger he can send into that building. And I honestly believe that's what it is, if he makes it through confirmation.
Mm-hmm. Another person that Trump appears to really want is RFK Jr. to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. What's your reaction to that pick?
Look, you wonder whether that's worse than or better than Matt Gaetz being the Attorney General of the United States. I mean, these are historically bad nominations that have been made in the past 24 to 48 hours. Tulsi Gabbard, had this other stuff not happened, would have been the worst nomination potentially in the history of American government to be the director of national intelligence. She's a Russian asset. So it's really scary. Obviously, RFK as a denier of vaccine efficacy. We are still sort of recovering from a COVID-19 environment here globally, and certainly in the United States of America. He has wild conspiracy theories that have been debunked very easily. And you don't want someone like that over scientific research of great national and global importance. The HHS is a huge department. I mean, it has a massive budget. It oversees Medicare, it's the CDC, all kinds of really important things that impact our daily lives, our health and our safety. And you don't want a guy like that in charge of that.
Interestingly, one Democrat who disagrees with you is Colorado Governor Jared Polis, who just posted a short time ago that he's excited by the news that the president-elect will appoint Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to HHS. He helped us defeat vaccine mandates. I hope he leans into personal choice on vaccines rather than bans. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so when I saw that tweet, I didn't believe it was from Jared. I mean, I went to the page, I still didn't believe it, and I dismissed it until other people, journalists in particular, started amplifying it and characterizing it. I'm shocked by that analysis, especially because a few months ago, the governor of Colorado criticized RFK for wanting, in his own words, to facilitate measles, a measles outbreak, among other diseases.
Kevin, what are you hearing from Republicans in the Senate about this choice that they're being forced to make? Not just about RFK Jr., but about Matt Gaetz, about Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. These are all very unconventional nominees. A lot of Senate Republicans want to give Donald Trump the leeway to name his candidates, his cabinet, but he's putting them in a tough position.
I think they think he clearly believes he has the mandate of the American people. He ran on all this stuff, and he's going to execute on it. However, if they start hearing from their constituents on any of these specific picks because they've gone a little too far, that's where you'll get the pushback. And it only needs to be 3 or 4 members of the Senate who could tank one of these. But, you know, we have to get through the background checks. We have to get through the interviews, if they're going to do interviews with each individual senator, and then even get to the hearings. So we've got a long ways to go.
Very quickly, do you think that's the reason that John Thune won the race for Senate Republican leader and not Rick Scott, who Trump wanted?
I've always thought John Thune was going to win that. He was poised from going back for years working with Mitch McConnell, and obviously he's a different face to put on it now. But yeah, Rick Scott didn't have very much support in the end.
Yep. Well, Mondaire Jones, thank you so much, Kevin Sheridan. Really appreciate both of you coming in, sharing your wisdom. Thanks so much. When you see President-elect Trump these days, you might see billionaire Elon Musk by his side. Up next, the new report that takes a closer look at Musk's new role as, in his words, the quote, first buddy. You're watching America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time. Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1-hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss
Correspondents True Crime, anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
President-elect Trump announced this week that Elon Musk will help lead a new agency known as the Department of Government Efficiency. The New York Times has new reporting on the billionaire's influence on the Trump transition, calling him Uncle Elon, as some Trump family members have now been known to do. A new article says, in part, quote, the world's richest person has ascended to a position of extraordinary unofficial influence in Mr. Trump's transition process, playing a role that makes him indisputably America's most powerful private citizen. Theodore Schleifer joins us now. He is a campaign finance reporter for the New York Times, the author of that article. Teddy, thank you so much for being here. Walk us through the timeline of how Musk went from a sometime critic of Donald Trump to someone who is now firmly ensconced in his inner circle.
Yeah, it all happened rather quickly. I mean, even in the calendar year 2024, we're really talking about here. Elon Musk and Donald Trump basically had no existing significant relationship before a couple months ago. Unlike someone like Howard Lutnick or Linda McMahon, who are the Transition Committee co-chairs who have known Trump for decades, Elon didn't really spend any time with him in person until actually what you're seeing right now on the screen, where he's jumping up on the stage at the Butler rally. Elon Musk wanted Ron DeSantis to be the Republican nominee, but beginning around this spring, he and advisors started meeting to plot a super PAC that became called America PAC, which Elon Musk would put upwards of $200 million into it. And now he's by Trump's side at Mar-a-Lago every day.
Pretty good return on investment. There was one section of your article that really stood out to me. I want to read it. You said, quote, Mr. Musk has assumed an almost mythical aura in Mr. Trump's inner circle. At Mar-a-Lago one recent evening, he walked into the dining room about 30 minutes after the president-elect did and received a similar standing ovation, according to two people who saw him enter. And as soon as I read that, I thought, President-elect Trump doesn't usually like it when the people who are surrounding him get as much attention, as much admiration as he does. Could that end up being a problem for Musk?
It could. I mean, look. Elon Musk is not currently in a official role. I mean, he's been appointed to lead this government efficiency commission, but it's not really clear what exactly that's going to look like structurally. So could Elon be fired? Like, kinda. He could just fall out of grace and be no longer inside the inner circle. But a lot of the reason why Elon has influence with Trump is not because he, is appointed by Trump to be Secretary of Transportation or whatnot. It's because Elon Musk has money and controls Twitter, and he has a lot of influence that is going to make him a player in the Trump inner circle, almost regardless of whether Trump wants him there.
Trump is known to enjoy the company of his fellow billionaires, so perhaps it's no surprise that he has struck up this friendship with Elon Musk. But now Musk is sitting in on calls with foreign leaders, including Ukrainian President Zelensky. We know that he is someone who has government contracts, not only with the U.S. government, but foreign governments as well. Talk about the possible entanglements here and the kind of impact he could have on foreign affairs.
Sure. Well, look, it's not he'd not be the first billionaire to work in government who had conflicts of interest, right? Most of these people do have conflicts of interest because they are enormously successful, which means they have lots of business interests around the globe, and that means that they have conflicts. I think what's different with Elon is what I was getting at a moment ago, where his role is going to be probably less regulated than kind of, a Goldman Sachs CEO who resigns to become Secretary of the Treasury, right? There's tons of congressional oversight. There's tons of personal disclosure forms. Elon's conflicts, especially during this transition period before he's even assumed a role at all, we're still learning about them, right? And look, I mean, conflicts are a part of working in government. Conflicts can be managed, as they say. But with Musk, just given the wealth he has, with $250, almost $300 billion, given the fact that he is, the head of not just one public company, but multiple private companies, the conflicts are going to require some lawyers full-time job.
It's going to be a fascinating relationship to watch as it evolves. Theodore Schleifer, thanks so much for being here.
You bet.
Once President-elect Trump takes the oath of office in January, the federal government is sure to feel a shakeup. But what about everyday people who live in our nation's capital? Coming up, we'll discuss the changes they're bracing for. You're watching America Decides.
CBS Mornings Plus, clearly more news, more smart conversation.
More money-saving tips, more recipes.
More uplifting ways to get you on your way.
Plus, more sports, more weather.
Clearly, more CBS Mornings.
Plus, sunshine day.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
I have a dorky look to me. I don't look like a criminal at all.
60 Minutes has reported on fraudsters, criminals, and hoodlums. But what this minor league thief was able to do surprised even us.
These are Yogi Berra's World Series rings.
A sports story you'll have to see to believe.
Need more time with 48 Hours? Go deep behind every true crime episode with first-hand accounts from 48 Hours Investigations.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Shock is the word that comes to mind.
Get inside the twists and turns and get in on the case. Listen to Postmortem from 48 Hours, now available wherever you get your podcasts.
I think we're very cute.
Yeah, I think we need to send out a Christmas card like this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
I wonder how Serena is feeling.
That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old? 70, yeah. I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Sunday morning, the Music Man, T-Bone Burnett, plus Ted Danson and Martha Stewart with Just the Recipe. Listen for the trumpet.
I report from a lot of war zones, but I don't really take the same risks.
He's one of the bravest war correspondents 60 Minutes has ever met. But it's his relationship with his mother that you will remember. Plus, the robots making marble masterpieces in Italy.
As a kid growing up in Chicago, there was one horror movie I was too scared to watch. It was called Candyman. But did you know that the movie Candyman was partly inspired by an actual murder? Listen to Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder, wherever you get your podcasts.
The CBS News original 60 Minutes opens its archives.
Pretty loose for a Friday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not my first show.
With moments you haven't heard before.
It's almost more fun that way when you have something to prove.
Listen to 60 Minutes, a second look, wherever you get your podcasts.
Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
I can see clearly now that the rain is gone.
That's right.
President-elect Trump is not only expected to significantly reshape the federal government when he takes office, he could also transform the city from which he will govern. A new Politico article outlines how Trump's second term will impact Washington's population, a population that's largely made up of Democratic people and full of federal employees. The author of that article joins us now. Michael Schaefer is a senior editor and columnist at Politico. Michael, it is so great to have you. And I think you really do capture something unique about this city, which is that at any time a new president comes in, there are obviously going to be some changes to the population. People leave, new people come in, but you're arguing that this time around the changes could be much more fundamental.
Right. Look, if people want to flatter themselves and say, well, you know, this administration is going to change everything, it's not really historically been the case. The city's basic trajectory has continued under right and left, even as the tasks given to the federal workers have changed quite a lot. This time is different. It's different because Trump arrives with a pretty specific agenda that includes getting rid of a lot of federal jobs, of people who took the job thinking, you know, I might never reach like top private sector salary, but I've got job security in this job. They want to change that. They also want to move a bunch of federal workers out of Washington. I think they want to move them someplace where they hope they quit so they can hire new ones. And that is a huge thing. The administration also on the sort of legal side, they have the power to kind of upend local democracy. So as voters here in Washington, we select a city council, we have schools, all that sort of stuff. But unlike people anywhere else in the country, here Congress can make laws to supersede them and say, this is how your schools are going to work, or this is how your garbage is going to get collected. For a lot of reasons, members of Congress don't want to do that historically, but this administration has shown a real hunger for kind of maximizing their impact.
And we know that President Trump is not a big fan of the D.C. government.
No, and weirdly, you know, he and the mayor of Washington got along pretty well at the beginning of his last administration. But in 2020, during the George Floyd protests, she okayed this big mural on the middle of 16th Street right by the White House that said Black Lives Matter. You know, there's a long tradition in this city of like renaming a stretch of road in front of a foreign embassy after some dissident from that country as a way of like spiting them. Well, in this case, she did it like to her own government.
Right. He could literally look out his own window in the White House and see that.
Yes, and he didn't like that. You know, a lot of people would have said, well, that's great. Black Lives Matter. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But he took it personally, and apparently there's a lot of bad blood there.
You know, it's no secret that congressional Republicans are often at odds with the D.C. government.
Yes.
Obviously, D.C. is overwhelmingly Democratic. Sometimes they will try to meddle in D.C. affairs. But you're saying they could try to make a power grab now that they control the Senate, the White House, and we anticipate the House?
Yes, and look, D.C. has only had self-government since like 1973, so 50 years. Before that, there were no elections. The executive branch and the Congress appointed people to run the show. It was like a colony, and nobody here got any say-so over anything. There's people in the Congress who have sought to get rid of home rule, so that it goes back to something like that. More often, and this is like has a long history, members of Congress will sort of grandstand, try to put some things on the locals here that they couldn't get away with at home, but to make us, you know, to make a statement. Oh, I wanted to pass a law that all communists have to register before going to the bathroom in Washington. You know, like that kind of stuff. This time, you know, it's a little different because there is less respect for home rule. There is a real animus towards an overwhelmingly Democratic city. Washington's rules are kind of the same as any other blue city, but these are increasingly different from the rules and the kind of way of life in the red places that most of the Republican leadership represents. So that's a big thing. And then there's abortion, which...
Abortion?
Well, right. So abortion, after Roe v. Wade, is no longer a guaranteed right. Trump has said that he believes it should remain up to the states. Not a lot of the Republicans in Congress don't agree with that, but Trump has said he believes it should remain up to the states, but this is not a state. So Congress could, in its wisdom, simply pass a law saying it is illegal here in Washington, which is not what the residents here want. It's a pretty liberal city, but it is something that is certainly within their power.
If you could get 60 members of the Senate to go along with it.
If you could get 60 members of the Senate. And you could also do it somewhere in between. Like Washington has one of the most liberal abortion regimes in the country in terms of later term abortions and so on. So it could be, well, we're going to put a limit on that.
Right.
So these are all things that are within the realm of possibility. Historically, they've been, a lot of stuff has been within the realm of possibility of any administration, but this one comes in maybe a little bit more motivated to stick it to the people who live here.
Well, I think you make a really compelling argument that no matter what the president and Republicans in Congress decide to do, this city is going to be transformed in some way. Michael Schaefer of Politico, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. And that does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides on Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now. Have a good one.
Welcome to the Daily Report on November 14, 2024. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Tonight, controversial picks. President-elect Donald Trump announces another key position in his upcoming administration, while on Capitol Hill,